Today I wanted to try something a bit new. I wanted to show you how I paint my glasses, how this becomes this. And the way I want to do that is that I'm going to show you the different stages. Every time I have painted a glass, so this one will then look like this. This is one layer, but I have to burn them after every time I have painted a layer. And how I do that is I put them in a kiln and I fire them at about 600 degrees, and that will take about a day. So instead of showing you one glass that I go through and it's going to take 5 days, I will paint a layer, then I will put it aside, and maybe a few different ones and different layers, and then I will show you how I paint the next layer, put that away, show you the next layer, because I have all the different layers here. I have glasses that are in all stages of development, and eventually we will have gone through every stage, even gold, for instance, and that's a different topic. I will show you that when we get to it. Okay, so the first thing we will have to do here is we have to decide which kind of colors we want. Now the redness of this glass will actually burn away. It will look like this once it's burned once, but they come in different colors, and so I don't get too confused, I will then usually start with a color that matches this. And so I think we will just do a red base for this one. And I have put them all, they actually come in little plastic bags, but I put them all in these little glasses here that I got from Lena, from my girlfriend. And they come in powders, these colors. And so I will put a bit of the red color here. This is raspberry color, I think it's called. And there are different oils, so you can paint with water-based paint for this, but I use oil in everything because you have just so many more options. And the two basis oils that I use is, well, it's called squeegee oil. I don't know exactly what it is, but it's a thicker fluid that will stick very nice to the glass. And then to get that to smooth out a bit, I have lavender oil, which is well, it smells nice as well, so that's an added bonus. Now for the first layer, the main mistake I used to make is that I painted it too thick, and what will happen is that you will get a lot of dust that settles into it. So instead of doing that, I now paint really thin layers, but it does mean that I have a few more times that I have to burn it. So we will paint a very thin layer on top of this first. And so this is turpentine. This is not used for the main painting part because it doesn't mix too well with the other oils and it'll run. But I do use it to wash my brushes in between, because I often use the same brush for the same, for different colors and for everything, because even though I have lots of brushes, I will usually fall in love with one of them, and then I will only use that one. So what a lot of painters do is they will use a knife like this and they will smooth out the colors. But since I use so many different colors and quite a small area, I don't have the time, patience, or place to do that, and I will just use my brush. And I will mix it out like this, and then you'll try to get the right consistency, because this will now be a bit too thick, and I will have to get some lavender oil into it. But if it's too much of that, it will just start running. And now let's see if this is the right one. But for that finish, I will use a very different kind of brush. It's not a fan brush, but it's I'm not sure what it's called. This happens. I do love some brushes and I will keep them so much that I do destroy them after a while. The nice thing here is that I can get a much smoother finish. I still have to hold it, but I can smooth out all the lines. Because ideally, this won't actually, it doesn't really, I'm not good enough for that yet, but ideally you won't see any brush strokes at all. You'll just have a red smooth red finish, because this will be the background on top of which everything else comes. So you're not really meant to see anything else other than the color for this one. And since I put layer on top of layer, all the mistakes that I make will multiply, and it's really important to not get off to a bad start, so to speak. And so this is a really important part of the process, even though it might not look like much. It is very important. All of my brushes I buy from all over the place, from very expensive ones in art shops to $1 ones on eBay. This is actually one of those. So quality-wise, I just tend to fall in love with different brushes, and it's not necessarily based upon price. So these ones I've only found from eBay actually, and I keep having to buy them because it takes a month for them to actually deliver. While other much more expensive ones do just not have this kind of use to them. And so I think I might want to have some clouds or something later. It's not that important that it's that smooth as it would be with a blue sky. The very important thing to do now is to wipe off the top, because in the end I will paint a black background for my signature at the bottom. And the way to do that is that once you burn them, this can't touch the stone, so I have to flip them and turn them on the head. But if there's any paint here, this will chip off. So at every stage, it's vitally important that I wipe off the top. It looks nicer too, but the main thing is that it has to be possible to set them on their head. And that's one layer done. Here we are. We'll put this to the side. And I think you got that, so I think we'll do the next stage. And let's see, I have quite a lot of different ones here. But I have to choose one that has only had one layer on it. Yeah, so this one. So this glass was just recently burned and has one layer on it. And at this stage, I do like to see how it's going to be when it's finished, which is why I will put a candle into it. Now you do have to be very careful with flames around all of these different liquids because they all burn very well. So now it's quite safe, but that is something to watch, because all of these oils and turpentine and everything burns very, very well indeed. Now it's just to decide what's going to come. So what I will usually do, and I think I will do that here, is to paint some mountains in the background. And well, this is actually green, which means that this should probably be background of forest, or at least a canopy of trees. So let's just start. I will usually not have an idea of where it's going. I just have the colors, and then I'll have to go off of those. And it's still not at that stage that it's going to be determined by what I do now, which direction it really wants to go in. So if we'll just do a blue background, the painting should still be quite open to different possibilities. So here I'll just get the sky blue one, and we'll empty that out. And the reason I use gloves is because of all of these powders and liquids, and you don't want to get those into your system. It's all safe once it's been burned, but while you paint, you really don't want to get it into you. And that's why gloves are actually a really important part of equipment for this. It's still advisable for even oil painting, but that's not as important. This, especially with the powders and with the different chemicals that are in these colors, that is important. And let's see, I have some white here that I've already made into a liquid, so it's a bit easier to use. And these colors can be mixed without a problem. The only thing is that, as with porcelain, once you burn these colors, they will actually look different. So for instance, I think the most insane one is this one, which looks very much white, but when you burn it, it goes purple. And you just have to get used to that. It takes a while, but you just have to know what color you're actually painting with, because it's not that. Alright, this I will probably be speeding up because it'll take a little bit, but I will just paint a general forest. This isn't going to be any details, but it's just going to be what's behind the details. Okay, and now one layer is done. So this can now be set aside so that it's going to be ready to be burned. And it's going to be even weaker than this. It's going to melt in, and it's going to be just really something to be far off in the distance. Now, once I've gotten to that stage, the more proper work really begins. So let's see what I have here. Yeah, for instance, this one here, I'm going to go a bit smaller. I have different sizes of glasses, but it's the same process for each of them. So here we have the mountains already. And so the background is already done. And this also necessitates another candle. And here I now want a forest in front, but this time it'll be much more detailed. And we're going to go ahead and speed that up too. And I'm just going to do some trees all around, and we'll see how that turns out. We'll get some black for this. I don't have a glass for that. It comes in these boxes. And just do a pure black background for that. And for such detail work, the brushes do become a lot smaller, and what you will see is you will see me grab my hand quite a few times because I need to be quite steady for this kind of work. So this will be, now it's been burned twice, so this is about the middle. So once this is done, there'll still be a bit to do, but this is kind of the main part, because now the things are going to come that you will really see. And even though we will have most of the forest done now, I'll probably have to go over it again for the next time after that, because you don't really know where the shadows are going to be and so on until it's been in the kiln. But let's see how it goes. Okay, so now I'm almost through. I can tell you a bit about how I go about this. So I'll plant a new tree here, and then I can tell you a bit. This is basically my own style and own way of doing it. And I don't look at any pictures. I haven't planned this beforehand. And I don't know what kind of trees I'm painting until I start. I have learned lots of different trees and how they work, and from that I just start painting really, and I will decide how the basic shape of the tree is. So for instance here I can then decide that okay, that the branches come one and then they don't branch out two at a time, like for instance this one might, in the way of some pine trees for instance. And then that it should have leaves, not and so on. So I'm basically designing my own little tree here, and it doesn't have to be a specific kind of tree that exists, but it still has to follow some rules. And from then on, it's just an intuitive process really, and based upon everything I've done before. So it's not, while it's in a realist kind of direction, it's not photorealism at all. But it's well, it's an imaginary painting, and it's just an intuitive process, and that kind of makes it grow in a different way, really. And you just base the thing that you do now on the thing that you did before, and it gets its own kind of logic. So I will decide a few things, and then the next decision will be based upon that. So while I was painting now, I realized that it might be nice with some fog in the background, and I will actually, I think, next layer add some trees here and then some fog. But a lot of these decisions only come once I've started on the painting, because only then can I really see and get different kinds of ideas that then come. And a lot of, for instance, this I have done 1,000 times before, so it's quite just a meditative process of growing trees. But when I'm doing things that I haven't done before, so for instance, what I am not so well versed in is waves and the sea. That will take a very different kind of concentration, and I will usually try to learn a bit beforehand, especially if it's something quite new. If it's a new flower, for instance, I will spend hours trying to learn how that flower works and how it looks and so on. But then once I paint it, I won't actually look at anything, and it's not that important that it gets true to the way it should naturally look. Although I like to keep it within the realm of the possible, and especially for flowers, it is nice that people recognize them, and then it can actually be nice to really follow how they look, but that can be done completely different from time to time. And I will just do the black base here, and then this is one layer that is finished. This is also the reason why I can paint a lot of layers in a day, and up to 40-50 glasses really, which is 40-50 layers within a day. But that doesn't mean I am painting 40 or 50 glasses, because they take quite a while to finish. So there we have that. And now the question is what I have to show you. So this is, now I have a pretty good idea of what to do. And it's about the same stage as, this will look very different, but it still has something to do with it. Here, most of it is done. The background is done, the foreground is to a certain extent done, colors have been added, and now it's really about the finishing touches. So at this stage, it is also the stage where I can add gold, if I want to do that. And I think that is what we're going to do. I'm not going to do the entire thing, but I'm going to show you the process behind it. And gold will always be the, not always, but will usually be the last stage, because if you paint over gold, it will be, the gold will really go away, and the paint on top of it will most likely crack. So gold, was quite disappointing once I learned about it. Looks like this. It looks brown when you paint with it, and it comes in tiny little bottles. Quite expensive, but you can use it for a long time unless you splash out. For instance, the rims actually do take quite a bit of gold, but for detail work it really lasts a long time. And then you can just do a very small amount. And it's not only gold that looks like this. This is silver, and here you have bronze. So all the different kind of metals that you can paint with look brown before they're burnt, and once they're burnt they will look like this. So it will get a really nice golden shine to it, but well, while you paint with it you just have to imagine. And usually you would want to have your own brush for gold, but since I am very much in love with this brush at the moment, I use it for most of my work. And I have to clean it out really well before I can use it for this. So don't do this. Use a different brush for gold. And for gold you have a very different kind of, you can't paint with just normal oils. It's a special kind of liquid that you need. I don't know really what it is. You just need a tiny little splash. So the nice thing is that it never actually dries up. You can always, so that's the reason I have it in here, is that I can always get it into a liquid again. So you never waste any of it, especially with something that's this expensive. You really want it to, you don't want to let anything go to waste. Put this here. And with gold, the thing is that you won't get any shades to it. So this, for instance, is just going to be, I'm going to try to do a background this time, but we'll see how it looks. There were quite different kinds of shades to the gold, but once it's burned, you'll just have one smooth surface. Oops. And so, I have found that doing very fine detail work is the best way to make the gold stand out. And that's what we're going to do here. For most of it is done, but I just want the leaves to come out a bit more. And what I will do then is to just really slight lines on top of the leaves. And as you can see, it just looks like a really weak brown, and all the while you have to remember that this is going to be a very shiny, very visible golden color. You just have to keep that in mind. And the finer the lines you make, which should be finer than this one, at least I think the nicer it comes out in the end. And so I'm not going to show you this entire process because, well, it's just this really. And so what I'm going to do with this one is I'm going to go around and I'm going to paint tiny little lines on each and every one of the leaves. And then once it's burned, it will look something like this, which do not have that fine lines, but you get the idea. And it really just shows it all very well. And well, that'll be black when you have the candle in a very dark room, but with just some light you will then get to see it. And I do like the effect, and I use gold quite a bit. I use silver too, which well, look like this, and you can do that with plants, and you can do all kinds of shapes with that too, and bronze. And as I said, all of them look brown, but then they turn out nicely once they have been in the kiln. I just have to wash this out cold. Like, when things dries out really quickly, it can really ruin your brushes. I go through so many brushes each year because I haven't been careful enough, but that's getting better. So once this is done, and you've done everything else, then I don't have anything in particular I can show it on, except for instance, this one. Now this has been painted with bronze, and that one I can actually turn on its head without it cracking. And what I will do now to finish it, oops, don't do that, is just to do, and I have to do this twice. I used to do just one layer, but that turned out to be too thick, and sometimes that actually cracks. So then to paint the bottom, because what I really do like is to have this feeling of being completely finished. And while you can't see this while it burns, it does kind of add to the finishing feel. And so I'll just do it like this. This will be quite a bit weaker once it's been burned. And then I will do another one, and then I will sign it. And that's when it's entirely finished. I'll just pop this over there. And now you have seen my entire process from beginning to finished. And thank you for watching. This is now how they will look when they're done. And the last thing I will show you is how I put it in the kiln. So this is my kiln. I have just finished a few glasses, and it's quite an old kiln, but it does the work, and I can fit a lot in there, which is the most important thing for me at the moment. And here you are. Quite a few are almost finished. If we go a bit closer, you can see how it looks in there. And I have to wait about before they get cold again, so I can take them out. And that's why they are in between stages.